For the first few years of World War II, the skies deep over Germany were considered an almost impenetrable fortress. German pilots, particularly the elite fighter units of the Jagdgeschwader fighter wings, operated with a sense of strategic immunity regarding their capital, Berlin, and key industrial centers like Schweinfurt and Regensburg. The primary threat came from the American heavy bombers, the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortresses and consolidated B-24 Liberators, flying the immense 1,100-mile round trip from bases in eastern England. Crucially, the P-47 Thunderbolt and the P-38 Lightning, the initial escort fighters, possessed internal fuel capacities that restricted their combat radius to approximately 350 to 400 miles. This meant the bombers were forced to fly the final, most vulnerable legs of the mission, often 300 to 400 miles into the German heartland, completely alone. German fighter doctrine, known as waiting for the turnback, was ruthlessly efficient. They positioned their Focke-Wulf FW-190s and Messerschmitt Me-109s far inland, waiting for the American escorts to hit their fuel consumption limit and head back toward the North Sea. Once the protective canopy was gone, the Luftwaffe unleashed massed formations, attacking the bomber streams with coordinated head-on passes and rocket attacks, utilizing heavy armament like 20mm and 30mm cannons to ensure rapid kills. The Germans believed their geography was their ultimate, unbreachable defense, and they consistently inflicted devastating, unsustainable casualty rates on the 8th Air Force. The established German confidence and strategic safety net were abruptly shattered in early 1944, a direct and devastating result of two synergistic technological breakthroughs by the Allies. The first was the successful marriage of the British-designed Rolls-Royce Merlin engine with the sleek, aerodynamically superior airframe of the North American P-51 Mustang. This fusion created the P-51B and P-51C models, producing a fighter that was not only faster than the German fighters at high altitudes, above 25,000 feet, but was also remarkably fuel-efficient. The Merlin engine gave the Mustang the performance characteristics, speed, climb rate, and maneuverability required to confidently engage and dominate the German interceptors. The second, and arguably the most crucial innovation, was the widespread adoption of the external drop tank. These auxiliary fuel tanks were a tactical necessity. Often made cheaply from paper or wood pulp, they could carry several hundred gallons of aviation fuel, extending the fighter's operational radius to nearly 600 miles and its maximum ferry range beyond 2,000 miles. Crucially, they were designed to be jettisoned the moment combat began, leaving the P-51 light, agile, and ready to fight, unlike the German Me-109s and FW-190s, which typically had fixed internal fuel limits. This single piece of technology solved the fatal geographic barrier. On March 6, 1944, the U.S. 8th Air Force launched its first major deep penetration raid, fully escorted by these long-range P-51s, targeting Berlin. The German interceptor pilots, scrambling for what they anticipated would be a routine, unescorted feast, were met with an unexpected swarm of aggressive, silver-painted American fighters that had traveled the entire route with the bombers. The shock, both tactical and psychological, was profound. The German leadership had believed Berlin was beyond the reach of effective fighter cover. The P-51's appearance proved that not a single target within the Reich was safe.
German pilots were suddenly forced into high-energy, prolonged dogfights hundreds of miles from the safety of their home airfields, facing a superior enemy whose fuel tanks never seemed to run dry.
The sustained presence of the P-51 Mustangs over Berlin marked the terminal collapse of the German Air Force, Luftwaffe, in the West, transforming the air war from a contest of strategic bombing into a systematic battle of attrition against German manpower. With the range issue solved, the Allies shifted their primary objective from just hitting ground targets to the systematic annihilation of the German fighter force itself. This strategy, known informally as mortal combat and implemented during campaigns like the Big Week, saw American fighter pilots released from the strict requirement of staying glued to the bomber formations. Instead, they were given specific operational freedom to aggressively hunt and pursue German fighters until they were destroyed. This meant the P-51s chased the Luftwaffe back to their home airfields, hitting them during takeoffs, landings, and even while they were taxiing or refueling. The American policy became one of total air dominance, extending the battle space across the entire breadth of Germany. This relentless pressure led to a catastrophic rate of attrition for the Luftwaffe, a loss that was disproportionately focused on the most experienced German pilots, the Experten. While Albert Speer's organizational genius kept German aircraft production soaring, the training pipeline for pilots could not possibly replace the veterans being shot down in what was effectively a meat grinder. The loss of even one veteran pilot, an Experten might account for dozens of kills, created a vacuum where only inexperienced, ill-trained pilots remained. These new recruits, often flying inadequate fuel mixtures, were easily shot down, accelerating the Great Turkey Shoot and cementing a vicious cycle of casualty and inexperience. By late 1944, the Luftwaffe was effectively crippled, unable to mount a serious, coordinated defensive effort. The Mustangs' victory over Berlin did more than just protect the bombers. It ensured that the Allies achieved absolute, irreversible air superiority, directly facilitating the success of all subsequent strategic bombing campaigns, and ultimately guaranteeing that the skies over Normandy would be clear for the D-Day invasion.